Hello and thank you for joining us on Sideline Story, your destination for sports news, analysis and discussions. I'm Brandon Yates and today we'll be chatting about the 2024 European Football Championships. We'll examine England's strengths and weaknesses, Germany's chances on home turf and take a look at a few other teams we think can either win the title or cause a few surprise results. I'll be getting into these topics with my two fantastic co-hosts, Yang Guang and Tian Yu. And guys, I don't know about you, but I love the Euros. One of my earliest football memories, I think back to, as you reminded me before the show, Tian Yu, 20 years ago, looking back to Euro 2004, because that's kind of when I started first watching football, particularly Manchester United. My family were always big Man U supporters. I remember Ronaldo crying when Greece defeated Portugal in the final. I remember that was a very impactful moment. So I think the Euros in particular is just one of those tournaments that I think is really exciting to watch. It's always great to see some of the players that you watch playing club football on a regular basis representing their national team. And it's also seemingly one of those continental international competitions where a lot of surprise results happen as well, where we don't often see the favorites lifting titles. But speaking of one of the favorites, Yang Guang, I would have to say, well, I think we'd all agree that England are one of the favorites to win the tournament this year. But that being said, their build-up to the tournament has been a bit strange. Gareth Southgate has made some big calls in terms of some of the players he's included and some of the ones that he's left out. There was also that recent loss to Iceland that also made people question Southgate and some of the team choices, and their defensive line looks a little bit shaky. So what do you make of England's preparations for Euro 2024? And do you think that they have a good chance of living up to that favourites tag?
Yeah, they are absolutely the favorite.
Yeah.
People expect them to not only win this Euro 2024, but the next World Cup in 2 years maybe. England has gone more than half a decade without winning a major tournament. People made the calculation, anyone under the age of 57 years old was not born when England last won a major trophy. So
how does that happen? Like, considering all of the talent that they've had over so many years, I mean, how have they not lifted silverware for so long? It just doesn't make sense. I think one of the reasons, actually, and this is something that the likes of Frank Lampard and Steven Gerrard and even Paul Scholes have discussed. They were part of that golden age of England football that literally won nothing. And they mentioned that because of how competitive the Premier League is and the competition between the likes of Chelsea, Liverpool and United, when they get to the England squad, those divisions still kind of exist, and you'll have like Liverpool players sitting together, United players sitting together, and there wasn't that much communication. That seemingly has changed. And I think that's why England are getting closer to lifting a major trophy, as we saw at the last Euros, and they've had one or two good World Cups here and there, but they still haven't crossed that line yet. So are we going to see that this year?
In the past 4 years, England lost a semi-final in Qatar and a final at Wembley.
So they're making progress compared to previous competitions that
they know
at.
what to expect in the final phase of a tournament. It's no longer a very good rookie team. They've gained enough experience along the journey. So I think it might be the year they could finally do it.
But what could go wrong? Because as we saw against Iceland, there are some problems. So what areas should they be looking at, and what should England fans be concerned about, as they go through the tournament?
Yeah, if there's one weakness about this team, I would say it's their defense line. I mean, there are some big names, but it doesn't make the team's defense as solid as it looks.
Yeah.
I mean, Harry Maguire didn't make it into the 26-man list.
I'm gonna come out and say that's a huge blessing for England. As I've made very clear in previous podcasts, I'm not a Harry Maguire fan.
I don't know if it's a good sign for England or not, because on one side, his struggle at club level really made people disappointed. But on the other side, the real question is who is going to replace him. To look at the central defenders, Southgate called up Louis Dunk, Mark Gelly, or Joe Gomez. I don't know.
Also young, inexperienced, pretty raw.
Yeah, I don't know if they are reliable defenders
Yeah.
at key moments in key matchups. And on the left back position, Luke Shaw has endured an injury-plagued season.
Yeah.
Southgate doesn't even know if he would be 100% healthy to play Euro.
Brilliant player, and definitely improved leaps and bounds at United. But yeah, he has been an injury liability for club and country for quite a long time.
Yeah, so maybe Joe Gomez or Kieran Trippier will replace him on the left back position.
Yeah,
But
I think Trippier probably has a better chance of slotting into that left back position, even though he is a right back. But
yeah.
he does seem to do a pretty solid job at left back when it's asked of him.
Yeah, neither of them plays left back as their preferred position. So there are some question marks over England's defence line.
But I think it would be too soon or too overly cautious to say that it's a problem, right? I think we have to agree that it's a question mark. But that being said, when you get to the latter stages of a competition like the Euros, you can't have any question marks in your squad.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit worrying, I would say, for England supporters at this point going into the tournament to have any question marks. Because I think in the past, even though England have disappointed, there hasn't historically been any question marks in an England squad. Generally, all of the players that get selected, you kind of knew before the team was selected that they were going to be there. Whereas this England squad, I think there were more than, I would say, 3 or 4 shocks in terms of inclusions and exclusions. Tianyu, from your side of things, do you think England are worthy of that favourites tag? And are there any areas, including that defensive line, that they should be concerned about?
Yeah, I mean, they're still they still have a very strong squad. But after that friendly loss against Iceland, I think England's weakness is pretty obvious now. And the biggest weak spot of this team is their head coach, Southgate.
Oh,
I would
okay.
say.
Even though he's, if you look at, the history of England and since he's joined, I mean, in terms of their performances at major competitions, I would have to say that's definitely improved under Southgate. I also don't necessarily think Southgate is the best man for the job, but he does seem to have at least improved the squad, which I think is pretty much all you can ask for of a manager when he joins, a team of the status of England.
Yeah, he did come to England when it was like at its lowest ebb. And I mean, he did a good job at uniting his players and managing the locker room.
Yeah, because he's been there as a player, right? At club and national level.
Yeah, has so much experience. But in terms of tactics and fielding players, he always seemed so unconfident and indecisive to me.
He seems to favour certain players as well. Maguire. He just seems to be one of those and there's nothing necessarily wrong with having favourites. But I also think when you're dealing with a team of the magnitude of England, there's no real room for that because you're dealing with too much talent.
Yeah. So many talents at disposal.
Yeah.
And I was reminded of the last Euro Cup final between England and Italy. And when England got an early lead in the first half, Southgate wasn't thinking about how to expand the lead with so many attacking talents at his disposal. Instead, he decided to take the defensive strategy,
which we saw with Bayern Munich recently. Tuchel.
Yeah. With over 80 minutes left in the game, and we know what happened next. His conservativeness and lack of confidence in his team, cost England the game. And also his choices of players often seemed very bizarre to me. Like you said, earlier last week when England was playing another friendly against Bosnia-Herzegovina, James Maddison and Jack Grealish were playing quite well in the game. Grealish even had 1 assist. It's fair to say that they are the source of creativity and energy for England in the front. And now Southgate chose to remove their names out of the squad.
But if you look at the other players in their positions, like Cole Palmer and Phil Foden, that's another problem with being the manager of England, is that you're dealing with so much talent and so many different players. But what I think is interesting that Southgate has done is that he seems to have left out proven performers in past tournaments and included players that are performing well right now. which in the past hasn't been England's approach.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty risky.
Yeah, I would say it was like clipping his own wings.
Yeah.
And in the friendly against Iceland, you could see that the outcome of that decision, which was lack of intensity in the front and energy and a less threatening attacking line. And to quote what a Chinese football commentator said, there are three kinds of illusions in football. One is that China will advance from the group stage of a big tournament, and two, Italy is a weak team, and three, England can win a title.
Right.
And, I mean, it's been over 50 years since the last time England won
Crazy.
a real title.
Crazy.
And they have never won a Europe Cup title. And I think these kind of historical factors and the urge for a title from the whole country can really add to the pressure on this whole team.
Yeah, and I think Southgate has really made a bold move here at Euro 2024 because I think, like you've mentioned, sometimes his tactics have let him down. And I think that's going to be increasingly important if England progress through the Euro 2024 knockout stages. I think there's also going to be some team chemistry issues because there are a lot of ins and outs in the squad recently. And I think some of the losses, particularly in that defensive line, could prove to be a make or break situation for England. So I think they're definitely the favourites, I would say, but there's also, I think, a lot more question marks about that squad as a whole than many neutral football fans realise. And speaking of, teams to watch, of course, Germany are hosting the tournament this year. And I think there is, in my opinion, some unrealistic expectations that have been placed onto this German team because they haven't been that great for the last couple of years.
No.
But with that in mind, I think the competitiveness of the Bundesliga has definitely increased, and just some of the performances of Bayern Munich and Leverkusen and even Dortmund reaching that Champions League final, I think there should be a lot of optimism amongst the coaching staff, the players, and even the fans. And of course, having home ground advantage is always a plus. But from your side of things, Yang Guang, can Germany realistically do something at their home tournament this year?
I think it's a great opportunity for them to reclaim that reputation as European powerhouse. Because, as you said, it's they have the home ground advantage, and the German teams did quite well in European competitions
And domestically.
at the club level. Yeah. But there are some obstacles there. I mean, I expect them to reach the knockout stage quite easily from that group. It's not a difficult group at all. But the problem is they would probably face a team from the group of death next.
Right.
Group B. It would be either Croatia or Italy
Spain.
or even Spain.
Wow.
Yeah. Look at those teams. It's still a very tough hurdle to get past. It's not a very flat route for Germany going forward.
Yeah.
And they've got some problems exposed recently, which is Manu Neuer's form. I mean, Neuer's decline in front of the goal line is more and more worrisome for German fans. People were voicing concerns about him continuing being the starting goalkeeper for Germany instead of Ter Stegen.
Yeah. Considering what he's been doing for Barca, I mean, he's been sensational for them.
Yeah, it reminds me of the 2006 World Cup when Germany also played as a host country. They replaced old Oliver Kahn with Jens Lehmann as starting goalkeeper, and Lehmann did a fantastic job.
One of the best keepers of his generation.
Especially
he was great in the
that,
Premier League for Arsenal.
Penalty shootout victory against Argentina in the quarterfinals.
Yeah.
I guess it's a similar situation now, but it's also different. I guess Neuer is still the starting goalkeeper for Germany only because Ter Stegen also had a rather terrible season with Barcelona.
You think so?
With too many goals conceded in La Liga.
I don't know. I thought he had a pretty good season. I mean, like he did make a couple of individual errors, but I still believe that he's one of the best shot stoppers in the world. But that being said, I mean, it's tricky because when you do look at those stats, it doesn't make pretty reading for Ter Stegen, and it probably also boosts Manuel Neuer's argument to be the starting keeper for Germany, and he always has been, even when Ter Stegen is playing at his absolute best.
I think it's a tricky situation
Very.
out there for Germany because it's not only a matter of who being the starting goalkeeper, but also a matter of the atmosphere inside the locker room. I guess there are some debates behind the scene.
But that being said, being on home turf and being familiar with the facilities around Germany, so being familiar with the stadiums. And just the talent in the squad coming through from particularly Leverkusen, when you think of Jonathan Tah, centre-back, Wirtz up front. So there is definitely, and even Kai Havertz for Arsenal has been pretty remarkable this season, which goes against what any of us believed was possible. So I think there's also some cause for optimism for Germany, right?
Yeah, I mean, especially Toni Kroos's return.
Yes, that too,
to
of
the
course.
midfield
Yeah.
really boosted Germany's confidence around the area.
But Tianyu, when you look at that German squad, do you think that I think like Yang Guang mentioned, they'll probably get through the group stages pretty easily, and then when they come up against a potential opponent from that group of death and going beyond that, that might be a bit of a stretch too far for this German team. But I also think of, wow, they've got so many proven performers and seasoned performers in that team. They're on home ground. They don't seem to be battling that much with the pressure of the expectations of the home crowd either. So do you think Germany potentially have a chance of having a really solid run at their home Euro 2024 tournament?
Yeah, I would say their prospects of achieving something in this tournament is pretty bright, looking pretty bright right now, because they really have a strong lineup. Because in every position, they have a strong, solid defense line led by Antonio Rudiger, whose performance I would say he should be called one of the best center backs in the world.
One of the most improved, I would say.
Yeah.
Because when he joined Madrid, there were kind of question marks about his performances, and he was on the bench for a large period of time.
Yeah.
And then he got into the starting lineup, and now he's one of the most critical players for one of the best, well, probably the best football club in the world.
Yeah.
And he's also a key member of this German team.
Yeah. And also in the midfield, there are a bunch of names like Toni Kroos, Musiala, Gundogan, Florian Wirtz, Thomas Müller, so many options.
Good blend of youth and experience there too.
Yeah, and the only problem may fall to their attacking lineup. We've seen a lot of occasions where Germany has the ability to push the ball deep into the box,
but no finisher.
No finisher. So I'm afraid they're faced with the old problem again this time, because the only real striker they can count on is
Harry Kane? No. They wish.
They wish they have Harry Kane in their squad. They can count on who they can count on is Niklas Füllkrug, who has been playing quite well.
What's his name again? I forgot his name. He was. I just remember it was Antonio Rudiger and a Dortmund player that got involved in the bust-up.
The main function of him on the pitch was more like being a pivot.
Right.
Like doing
like a false nine.
For the team in the front, and goal scoring may not be what he excels at, and also like you said,
or Havertz, I guess, to a certain extent.
like
Great
Kai
footballer,
Havertz.
but not a proven goal scorer.
He's a very good player who has been through a good season with Arsenal, but may not be the scorer that Germany currently needs the most. So I think the performance of Füllkrug actually will decide how far this German team can go.
He did
in this
score
tournament.
a very important equalizer against Spain in the World Cup in Qatar.
Yeah, and that's where he kind of made a name, well, supposedly made a name for himself, because I forgot his name, but that is where he kind of became a regular in the German team, were through his performances in Qatar.
Yeah, and also the fielding choice of Nagelsmann, I would say, is another issue. His reluctance to call up Dortmund players like Mats Hummels, Julian Brandt, and Karim Adeyemi.
There must be some history behind it.
Yeah, is
Also, maybe a bit of favoritism, like Southgate and some of his selections.
Yeah,
potentially.
maybe. But I think the choice of not fielding Hummels is a little bit confusing to me.
But that being said, when you've got Jonathan Tah and Antonio Rudiger, I mean, I wouldn't see Hummels getting past those two. On the bench, for sure. I think having that experience on the bench or having someone like that in the squad would be hugely beneficial for the Germans, but I wouldn't see him as a starter for Germany. It seems like England and Germany, two of the biggest rivals in football, are dealing with similar problems where there's question marks, but in completely different areas of the pitch. So for England, it seems to be defensive, and Germany, it's definitely attacking. But yeah, both squads are, littered with talent. So even though there are question marks, I think they potentially both have a pretty good chance of having a deep run in Euro 2024. And speaking of, teams with talent, Portugal, on paper, Yang Guang look pretty invincible. But that being said, there are a couple of pundits and football fans that are questioning Portugal and saying they lack that championship quality and might just be one of those teams, maybe like Belgium, that have a lot of star names, but don't necessarily have the mettle to lift a title, even though they have done it recently. I think, they've won continental tournaments, very recently. I think they won the
Nations League.
The Nations League, thank you. So, they have been there and they have lifted trophies. So I wouldn't be that surprised if they had a good run at Euro 2024. But can they lift the title this year?
I guess the saying of Portugal lacking the champions quality comes from Messi fans.
It must be, because I mean, if you look at those players at club level, I mean, if for example, Bernardo Silva, Cristiano Ronaldo, Ruben Diaz, I mean, they've been absolutely dominant domestically and in Europe. And of course, we know what Cristiano Ronaldo's achieved across his career, both for club and country. So I mean, the squad does have title winners in it.
Yeah. That was just a joke, but
but I agree with you. Maybe they are. I mean, look, they are. For example, when Ronaldo plays in some of the opposing stadiums in Saudi Arabia, the number one chant that he hears is Messi, Messi.
Yeah.
So there is definitely some online trolling from Messi fans towards not just Ronaldo, but potentially towards the Portuguese team too.
But if you think about it, this Portugal squad, it's called the Golden Generation Portugal. Yet they haven't achieved anything except that Nations League trophy so far. The 2016 winning squad is completely different compared with the squad they have now.
But the main man's still there. Ronaldo's still there.
Yeah. But following that, at Euro 2022 and recent World Cups, Portugal really disappointed fans.
Particularly that loss to Morocco at the World Cup. I mean, what was that?
I think the previous coach, Fernando Santos, don't really think he figured out how to put the big names together in one piece. For example, I don't think he figured how to play Bruno Fernandes, Joao Felix, and Bernardo Silva at the same time on the pitch.
And that's something that past England managers have also struggled with. And that's also probably a huge part of England's dry spell in terms of titles won.
Resistance issue.
Yeah.
I guess
having so much talent and not knowing how to put it all together.
In this sense, I think the arrival of Roberto Martinez to Portugal is a good sign for the team. Portugal was unbeaten throughout the year of 2023, and I think maybe it's time for fans to change their attitude towards this team because they can achieve something.
Tianyu, do you think that Martinez is the right chef to get this final meal delivered for the Portuguese team and maybe see them lift the Euro 2024 title?
I'm not sure about Martinez, but I'm sure Portugal is still looking to be the strongest. Because they have such a star-studded squad. So many talents in all positions. Like you said, Ruben Diaz, Bruno Fernandes, Bernardo Silva, Rafael Leão.
Yeah, another one of those teams that has a really strong spine, from the centre-back to the central midfield option and up front.
Yeah, and I think like just as a lot of the other teams are faced with the striker problem, they may have also similar trouble because even as a big fan of Cristiano Ronaldo, I know he's still one of the best strikers in the world with top-level ability in seizing chances in the side box and terminating the game. but he's 39 now, and whether his body can sustain that intense.
They've done tests on
90
Ronaldo, and
minutes
apparently he still has the
game.
body of a 22-year-old. So I think age is just a number with that human. Not sure how human he is, but yeah, I don't think age affects him at all, to be honest.
Yeah,
But I agree with you. I think people will always question him and his advancing years. And Ramos has also been very inconsistent for PSG this season, even though he has been proven to be quite a good performer for the national team. And while Rafa Leao is a phenomenal talent, he's not necessarily an out-and-out striker, right?
Yeah, he's like a winger, a brilliant winger.
That can play striker, but like not an out-and-out centre forward.
So the problem is without Ronaldo, neither Ramos nor Joao Felix can be counted as much in the box.
And if Ronaldo does start, I don't know if he's going to be consistently playing the full 90. But when you have him starting, I think the whole team kind of needs to alter the way they play and take on more responsibilities.
Revolve around him.
But normally that does bear fruit, and he will generally score you goals. But it might affect the way Portugal plays. So I think the role of the manager to get the best out of this Portuguese side is going to be crucial. But now when we look at other teams, Yang Guang, and I've also mentioned that at past Euros there have been some surprises. I think back to Euro 2024, no one saw Greece lifting that title. So do you think there are any potential surprise packages this year?
I think Austria can trigger some upsets. I mean, Ralf Rangnick might not have made any difference.
Another
with
great choice by United.
Manchester United, but he's definitely changed Austrian national team. He's built a very exciting young team that is energetic and pragmatic on the pitch. In the past 15 games, they only lost one match, which was a 3-2 loss to Belgium. They also beat the likes of Germany and Italy, and they scored in every single one of those 15 games.
Wow. I still maintain that has nothing to do with Rangnick. No, but I mean, look, he deserves credit, and that Austrian team does deserve credit because those stats don't lie.
Yeah, so I think they deserve fans' attention, even though they fell into a relatively rather tough group facing France and the Netherlands. But those two powerhouses, they shouldn't underestimate this team because they can be easily punished.
For sure, for sure. Tianyu, any dark horses from your side?
Well, my picks are the Netherlands and Italy. Both of them are in a very tough group.
Yeah.
And but both teams can count on their solid defense line. I mean, the Netherlands have Van Dijk, Ake, and Matthijs de Ligt.
Right, yeah.
And Italy has a less famous but also pretty solid defense squad. Alexandro Bastani, Federico Di Marco, and Giovanni Di Lorenzo. I think a solid defense line will be the foundation for every team. And when the game reaches a deadlock and you can't break through the defense line, they might surprise you with a goal from like corners or free kicks.
And generally those teams are the ones that cause a few upsets or surprises, the ones that are very difficult to break down and catch frustrated favorite teams on the break. So I think that I agree with you there, Tianyu. So those two teams with their strong defensive lines could potentially go further in this competition than some people anticipate. I still think in terms of favourites for the title, I think we have to go with Portugal, England and France. But like you guys have mentioned, there's a couple of other teams there that are looking really strong. And I think we can definitely agree that Euro 2024 is going to be very, very exciting indeed. But that's all we have time for on this week's episode of Sideline Story. Thank you so much for joining us. And of course, we will be back next week with our latest topic, and we'll see you then.
This is CGTN Radio. Hear the difference.